We spend our lives running from failure, yet the greatest wisdom hides inside our defeats. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. This is the profound secret ancient failure stories hold for us. In this exploration, we will unearth 24 timeless Stoic principles, each one pulled from the ashes of a famous ancient collapse. You will gain a complete framework for building a resilient and tranquil mind, one that is not shattered by setbacks but strengthened by them. We will see how a military catastrophe teaches true control, and how a philosopher's exile forged a love for fate. What is one personal failure you believe you could never learn to accept? What is the one thing you truly control, even in total loss? It is not the final outcome, not the actions of others, and certainly not the tide of fortune. It is your own judgment and your response. This is the very heart of the first lesson, the dichotomy of control, and its power is never more apparent than in the ashes of a military disaster. The ancient Stoics taught that some things are up to us and some things are not. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions are fundamentally within our command. Everything else, from our reputation to our health to whether we win or lose, is not entirely our own. The philosopher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, put it with stunning clarity. He said, "What is up to us is our faculty of judgment, our impulse to act, our desire, our aversion. In a word, whatever is our own doing. What is not up to us is our body, our property, our reputation, our office." In a word, whatever is not our own doing. Consider the story of a Roman general after a devastating defeat. The battle is lost, his legions are shattered. The standard of the eagle has been captured by the enemy. In the eyes of Rome and the world, he is a failure. Yet, in that moment of supreme collapse, what remains his alone? He cannot control the fact of the defeat. He cannot control the lives already lost. He cannot control the political fallout awaiting him in the Senate. But he can control his own virtue. He can choose courage over despair. He can choose to take rational, disciplined action to save the remaining soldiers. He can choose justice in how he treats his men and wisdom in planning the retreat. His honor does not lie in the victory, but in his righteous conduct in the face of that loss. The external event was beyond his power, but his internal citadel remained unbreached. Now, bring this home to a failure in your own life. Think of a recent setback, perhaps a project that did not work out or a personal goal you did not meet. Take a moment and make two lists. On one side, write down everything that was genuinely outside your control. The market conditions, another person's reaction, an unexpected delay. On the other side, write down what was always yours to command. Your preparation, your effort, your integrity during the process, and most importantly, your judgment about the event now. This simple act of separation is the first step toward a Stoic resilience that failure cannot break. The Stoics didn't believe in bouncing back, they believed in leaning in. This is the essence of the second lesson, Amor Fati, a love of one's fate. It is the radical practice of embracing everything life hands you, not with passive resignation, but with active, even joyful acceptance. Failure is not a detour from your path. It is the very material of the path itself, the rough stone that sharpens your character. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire plagued by war and plague, wrote in his private journal, a loving reminder to himself. He said, "Learn to love what is assigned to you. The fates spin a thread for you, and it is yours to embrace." This is not a call for naive positivity. but for a deep trust in the interconnected nature of events. Every setback, every disappointment, is woven into the larger tapestry of your life for a reason you may not yet see. Consider the Roman philosopher Seneca, a statesman and writer who fell out of favor with the emperor. He was forced into exile on the island of Corsica for 8 long years. In the eyes of his society, his career was over, his life a ruin, yet Seneca did not wither there. He leaned into his fate. He used the isolation and the quiet, the very things meant to punish him, to fuel his most profound writings. His exile became the crucible for his letters and essays, works that would guide and comfort millions for 2,000 years after his death. The failure was not his end, it was the necessary condition for his greatest contribution. Now, bring this principle into your own story. Look back at a past disappointment, a rejection, a plan that fell completely apart. Instead of seeing it as a mistake or a stain on your record, try to reframe it. Ask yourself, what if this was meant for me? What strength did it force me to develop that I would not have otherwise? What door closed so that a more fitting one could open? This simple shift in perspective, from fighting your history to loving it, transforms the weight of the past into fuel for the journey ahead. It is the difference between being broken by what happens and being forged by it. What if your biggest problem was actually your greatest opportunity? This is the radical core of the third lesson, the principle that the obstacle is the way. It is the understanding that the very things which seem to block our progress are in fact the raw materials for it. Challenges do not obscure the path, they are the path itself. They reveal the true quality of our character and force us to innovate in ways comfort never could. Marcus Aurelius, constantly tested by war and political intrigue, offered a powerful metaphor for this process. He wrote, "That which blocks the way becomes the way." And elsewhere, he noted how fire tests gold and adversity tests strong men. The obstacle is not an enemy to be defeated, but a fire that forges us into something stronger and more resilient. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, whose name is synonymous with invention. His quest to create a practical electric light was not a straight line to success, but a gauntlet of repeated public failures. He tested thousands of different materials for the filament, each one burning out, each one a small defeat. A reporter once asked him how it felt to fail 1,000 times. Edison's reply was pure Stoic reframing. He did not say he failed 1,000 times. He said he discovered 1,000 ways that did not work. Every single obstacle, every filament that turned to ash was not a barrier. It was a necessary step that eliminated a wrong answer and forced a deeper understanding. The obstacle of repeated failure was the very way to his ultimate, world-changing breakthrough. Now bring this lens to a challenge you are facing right now. It could be a difficult project at work, a strained relationship, or a personal goal that feels out of reach. I want you to name that obstacle clearly and simply. Then, take a moment and list 3 potential ways this very difficulty could actually benefit you. Perhaps it is forcing you to develop a new skill you have been avoiding. Maybe it is revealing a weakness in your plan that, if addressed, will make the final outcome far stronger. Or it could be teaching you a level of patience you did not know you possessed. The obstacle is not in your way, it is the way. Your job is not to remove it, but to use it. The Stoics had a radical tool for eliminating the fear of failure. They did not avoid thinking about what could go wrong. They actively and systematically invited those thoughts in. This practice is known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Its purpose is not to breed pessimism, but to disarm the unknown. By mentally rehearsing potential setbacks, we strip them of their terrifying novelty. When a feared event is familiar to the mind, it loses its power to shock and paralyze us in the moment of crisis. We have already walked that dark path in our thoughts and discovered that we can, in fact, keep walking. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to regularly practice this very exercise. He wrote that we should anticipate not just the common occurrences, but all possibilities. He said, the person who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. He specifically recommended contemplating poverty, exile, and even death, not to live in dread, but to remove their sting and to appreciate the fullness of life when it is present. Consider an ancient merchant whose entire fortune is loaded onto a ship bound for Rome. The voyage is dangerous, threatened by storms and pirates. A man consumed by fear might refuse to send his goods, stagnating in safety and poverty. A naive man might assume all will be well, only to be shattered by a shipwreck. But the Stoic merchant does something different. Before the ship even sets sail, he sits quietly and visualizes the worst. He sees the storm, the splintering wood, the loss of every amphora of wine and olive oil. He feels the initial pang of loss, and then he thinks it through. What would remain? He still has his health, his knowledge of trade, his relationships. He could begin again. By pre-living this catastrophe, he does two things. He prepares a rational contingency plan, and more importantly, he severs the link between the loss of his goods and the loss of his peace of mind. The failure, if it comes, is no longer a world-ending event. It is a difficulty he has already faced and overcome in his mind. Now, bring this ancient practice to a modern fear. What is an outcome you are anxious about in your own life? Perhaps a difficult conversation you need to have, or a presentation at work, or a financial risk you are considering. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and mentally walk through the worst-case scenario. Do not just glance at it, dwell there. If the conversation goes badly, what is the actual result? If the presentation fails, what then? If the financial risk leads to a loss, what would you truly have left? Identify with absolute clarity what you would still control in that situation. Your ability to learn, to adapt, to try a different approach, to maintain your character. This mental rehearsal is not an admission of defeat. It is a declaration of profound inner strength, a way of building a fortress within your mind that no external failure can ever breach. In Stoicism, losing your reputation is not a failure. Losing your integrity is. This is the uncompromising core of the fifth lesson. For the Stoics, everything outside our own reasoned choice, everything we typically chase after or run from, is classified as an indifferent. Wealth, poverty, fame, obscurity, health, sickness, even life and death itself, these are not good or bad in their own right. They are merely the raw material upon which we exercise our sole true good, our moral purpose, our virtue. A successful outcome achieved through deceit is a true failure of character, while a noble defeat born with courage and justice is a profound and lasting success. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew the depths of personal hardship, put this truth in the starkest terms. He said, "What is truly good or evil? The right use of appearances." The faculty of the will. He insisted that our will is the only thing that can be good or evil and nothing else. Your reputation is not your will. Your social standing is not your will. These are external things blown about by the opinions of others. Only your integrity, your commitment to acting with wisdom and justice, remains firmly within your command. History offers a powerful example in the Roman statesman Cato the Younger. He was a man who fiercely opposed the rise of Julius Caesar, seeing in him the end of the Roman Republic. In the civil war that followed, Cato found himself on the losing side. His cause was defeated, his political career was in ruins, and he was cornered by Caesar's forces. Facing certain capture and a forced pardon that would compromise his lifelong principles, Cotto chose to take his own life. Now, his final act is a complex and difficult one, but his unwavering stance illustrates the point. In the eyes of the world, he was a spectacular failure, a defeated man whose side had lost. But in the Stoic view, by refusing to bow to what he saw as a tyrant, and by remaining steadfast to his conception of republican virtue until his last breath, he succeeded in the only thing that truly mattered. He preserved his integrity when everything else was lost. Now, bring this demanding standard into your own life. Think of a time you achieved a success, perhaps a promotion or a win, but you had to cut a corner or compromise a personal value to get it. Does that success feel as sweet, or is it tinged with a quiet unease? Now, recall a different moment, a time you clearly failed by external measures, but you know in your heart you acted with honesty, with fairness, with courage. Which of those two outcomes actually feels more like a victory when you look back on it? That feeling is the quiet confirmation of a profound truth, that your character is the only possession that can never be taken from you, and its cultivation is the only success that ultimately counts. You are looking down on your life from the stars. How big does that failure seem now? This is the essence of the sixth lesson, the view from above. It is a powerful mental exercise that shrinks our anxieties and disappointments by placing them against the backdrop of the entire cosmos. When we feel crushed by a setback, this practice pulls us out of the narrow confines of our own story and reminds us of our small yet connected place in a vast and ancient universe. It fosters a profound perspective that dissolves self-importance and quiets emotional turmoil. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who carried the immense weight of an empire, frequently used this very technique to ground himself. In his private writings, he reminded himself to frequently take a bird's-eye view of the world, to see the countless cities and nations, the vast expanse of time, and the brief, fleeting lives of all creatures. He wrote, "Keep before your eyes the rapidity with which all things pass away and are no more. Think of the immense void of time before you were born, and the equally infinite expanse that will follow your death." In this context, our brief struggles and our perceived failures are but a whisper in the cosmic wind. Consider a defeated emperor, his capital city fallen, his legions disbanded, his life's work erased. In that moment of absolute personal and political collapse, the pain is all-consuming. But then he practices the view from above. He mentally rises above the burning city, seeing it as just one point of light on the globe. He rises further, seeing the entire Earth as a small blue sphere, his lost empire a mere speck. He contemplates the thousands of empires that have risen and fallen before his, and the thousands that will come after. His personal tragedy, while real and painful, is not unique, nor is it the center of the universe's story. This perspective does not erase his grief, but it places a container around it, preventing it from consuming his entire being. It allows him to endure the loss without being defined by it. Now, bring this cosmic lens to a current worry in your own life. Close your eyes and take a breath. Picture the specific problem, the failure you fear, or the setback you are grappling with. Now begin to zoom out. See yourself in the room, then see your town from above, then your country, then the whole earth hanging in the black silence of space. Contemplate the billions of other lives being lived simultaneously, each with their own joys and struggles. Think of the centuries that have passed and the centuries to come. From this vantage point, look back at your worry. Notice how its size and intensity have changed. It has not vanished, but it has been put in its proper proportion. This is not about minimizing your experience, but about liberating yourself from its overwhelming gravity. The view from above grants you the space to breathe, to think, and to choose your response with a newfound clarity and calm. Your ultimate failure is already guaranteed. Now what? Every single one of us will one day draw our final breath. This is not a morbid thought to the Stoic, but a liberating one. The seventh lesson, Memento Mori, which means remember you must die, is a powerful tool for cutting through the noise of daily anxieties. It uses the certainty of our end to instill a profound sense of urgency and perspective, making our daily stumbles and social embarrassments seem exactly as insignificant as they are. When you truly internalize that your time is limited, the fear of minor failures evaporates, replaced by a drive to act on what genuinely matters. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured this idea perfectly in a letter to his friend. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and it has been given in sufficiently generous measure if you know how to use it." The problem is not the length of our days, but the depth of our distraction. We fritter away hours worrying about things that will mean nothing on our final day. Consider the story of Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. Accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and impiety, he was sentenced to die by drinking a cup of poisonous hemlock. In his final hours, his friends urged him to escape, to beg for mercy, to fight the verdict. But Socrates, embodying the Memento Mori principle, faced his execution with stunning calm. He had lived a life in pursuit of wisdom and virtue, and he saw no reason to abandon those principles at the end. His death was not a failure of his life, but its ultimate confirmation. He understood that a life cut short while living with integrity was infinitely more valuable than a long life lived in cowardice and compromise. His final moments were a masterclass in how remembering death can free you from the fear of any earthly consequence, including failure itself. Now bring this stark reality into your own life. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself a difficult but clarifying question. If you knew with certainty that you had only 1 year left to live, what would you immediately stop doing? What perceived failures would you instantly stop worrying about? And more importantly, what courageous act, what long-delayed conversation, what passionate project would you finally begin? The shadow of your end is not a threat. It is the brightest possible light, illuminating the path to a life lived without regret for the things you were too afraid to try. The most successful Stoics ended their day with a failure review. This nightly ritual was not a time for self-punishment, but for calm, rational analysis of their own actions and judgments. They understood that the raw material for building wisdom is found in the events of the day, especially in our stumbles and setbacks. By putting pen to paper, they transformed fleeting experiences into permanent lessons, creating a personal laboratory for self-improvement. The very act of writing forces a clarity that thinking alone rarely achieves. It separates you from the heat of the moment and allows you to examine your own choices with the objectivity of a scientist studying an experiment. You begin to see patterns in your reactions, to identify the precise moments where your judgment was clouded by fear, anger, or vanity. This is how a failure is alchemized into progress. The most famous journal in history, The Private Thoughts of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, stands as the ultimate testament to this practice. His meditations were never intended for publication. They were his personal failure reviews, his nightly dialogues with himself, written on the front lines of war and in the quiet of his chamber. He would question his own anger, examine his motives, and remind himself of his principles. He was, in essence, holding himself accountable, using the page as a mirror to see his own character more clearly and to file away the rough edges. You can adopt this practice with a simple, modern prompt inspired by the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Each night, as you prepare to end your day, ask yourself these 3 questions. What one mistake did I make today? What false judgment or uncontrolled emotion led to it? and how can I act differently tomorrow when faced with a similar challenge? The focus is not on the external outcome, but on the internal misstep. Perhaps you lost your temper in a meeting. The failure is not the disagreement itself, but the judgment that the situation demanded an angry response. The lesson is to practice pausing before you speak, or maybe you procrastinated on an important task. The failure is the judgment that present comfort was more valuable than future benefit. The lesson is to break the task into a smaller, less daunting first step for tomorrow. For the next 7 days, I encourage you to try this. Take just 5 minutes before bed. Write down one small failure from your day and the single most important lesson it holds. Do not write a long diary entry. Be concise and surgical. You are not keeping a record of your days, but a logbook for your character. After 1 week, you will not just have a list of 7 mistakes. You will have a personalized map of your own mind, revealing the hidden paths where your judgment tends to go astray, and the new route you are building toward a wiser, more resilient self. What if your failure was a necessary stitch in the fabric of the universe? This is the profound shift in perspective offered by the 9th lesson, Sympathaya. The ancient Stoics saw the cosmos not as a collection of separate events, but as a single, living, breathing organism where everything is woven together. Your personal story, with all its triumphs and stumbles, is one thread in this immense tapestry. A perceived failure in your life is not a tear in the cloth, but simply a dark thread that adds depth, contrast, and meaning to the overall pattern. Believing this deeply fosters a radical acceptance and shrinks the ego's desperate need to see itself as uniquely successful or uniquely cursed. We move from being the star of our own drama to being a grateful participant in a cosmic story. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire that felt like the entire world, constantly reminded himself of this greater unity. He wrote in his Meditations that all things are intertwined with one another. A sacred bond unites them. Nothing is unconnected. Everything is coordinated and organized into one common order. He saw himself as a limb of a larger body, and just as a hand does not complain when it bears a burden for the sake of the whole person, we should not resent the parts we are asked to play, even the difficult ones. Consider the fall of a great ancient city like Carthage. For its citizens, its leaders, and its armies, its destruction by Rome was an unimaginable catastrophe, the ultimate national failure. Everything they had built was erased, yet from the vantage point of history we can see how that collapse was not an end, but a pivotal transformation. The end of Carthaginian power allowed Roman culture, law, and language to spread, forming a foundation that would later influence the entire Western world. The ashes of one civilization fertilized the ground for another to grow. The failure was real and painful for those who lived it, but it was also a necessary part of a larger, unfolding process that they could not possibly perceive in their moment of loss. Now bring this cosmic perspective to a recent setback in your own life. Think of a project that fell apart, a job you did not get, or a relationship that ended. We naturally see this through the narrow lens of our own disappointment, but I want you to try a different view. Ask yourself, how might this event have unknowingly helped someone else? Perhaps the job you did not get went to a person whose family desperately needed that income. Perhaps the ended relationship freed your partner to find a more compatible love, or forced you to develop a self-reliance you now cherish. Maybe the failed business venture created a learning opportunity for a junior employee that shaped their entire career. You are not the sole author of your story. You are a co-author in a story far grander than your own. Seeing your stumbles as contributions to this vast, interconnected whole can transform the sting of personal failure into a quiet sense of purpose. The Stoics played to win, but they were prepared for any score. This is the essence of the 10th lesson, the reserve clause. It is the practice of adding a silent, mental condition to every single one of your endeavors, a quiet whisper of fate permitting to your most ambitious plans. You commit your entire effort to the action, while inwardly and completely releasing your attachment to the final result. Your focus shifts from the unpredictable outcome to the one thing you can truly master, the quality of your own attempt. The philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who understood the fragility of all plans, gave the clearest instruction on this practice. He advised his students to say to themselves, when they are about to undertake some task, "I will sail across the ocean if nothing prevents me." He explained that you must hold the matter itself, the sailing of the ocean, as conditional, but hold the will to do it well as unconditional. You control the effort, not the event. Picture an athlete training for the ancient Olympic Games. For years, he has pushed his body to its absolute limit. He has followed a strict diet, honed his technique, and visualized his performance. On the day of the race, he steps onto the track and gives everything he has, every ounce of strength and spirit. This is his part, and he executes it with total commitment. Yet, in his heart, he has already made peace with the outcome. He knows another runner might be faster on this particular day. An injury might flare up. The weather might turn. He has done his part, and the rest is not his to command. If he wins, he accepts the laurel without arrogance. If he loses, he accepts the defeat without despair. His victory was not in the wreath placed on his head, but in the dignity and wholehearted effort he displayed on the track. His goal was to run well, not merely to finish first. Now bring this powerful mental shift to a goal you are currently chasing. What is something you are working hard for right now? A promotion, a creative project, a fitness milestone. I want you to hold that goal in your mind. Now consciously add the reserve clause. I will achieve this goal, fate permitting. Feel the subtle but profound sense of relief that comes with that thought. You are not giving up on your ambition. You are, in fact, strengthening it by freeing it from the choking grip of a specific demand. Your job is to pour your best energy into the process to control the controllable. The final result is now in the hands of a universe far larger than your plans, and you are prepared to meet it with grace, whether it matches your hopes or not. Is that failure a catastrophe, or is it just your first impression? There is a critical gap, a sliver of time between something happening and our full-blown reaction to it. The Stoics called this the space for the discipline of assent, the skill of withholding your automatic agreement from that initial, raw impression that screams in your mind. You are not your first thought. You are the gatekeeper who decides whether to let that thought define your reality. Epictetus, who built his entire philosophy on the power of our judgments, gave us the foundational rule. He said, people are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The event itself is neutral. It is the story we instantly tell ourselves about the event that creates the suffering. Consider a Roman senator waiting for news of an important vote. A messenger arrives breathless and delivers a report. The vote has gone against him. His proposal is dead. The initial impression that floods his mind is one of total disaster, humiliation, the end of his influence. This is the first unexamined story. But if he has practiced the discipline of assent, he catches that thought at the gate. He pauses, he questions it. Is this truly a catastrophe, or is it merely a setback? What are the actual facts stripped of my fears and my pride? The fact is the vote failed. That is all. The rest, the humiliation, the ruined career, is a story he is adding. By refusing to assent to the catastrophic interpretation, he reclaims his power. He can now choose a different judgment. Perhaps this frees him to pursue a better, more popular proposal. Perhaps it reveals who his true allies are. The event is the same, but his peaceful mind is preserved. Your own life is filled with these small messengers delivering bad news. An angry email arrives. Your first impression is one of attack and disrespect, but pause, withhold your assent. Is that email truly a declaration of war, or is it just a poorly worded message from a stressed-out colleague? You make a mistake during a presentation. The first impression is one of shame and incompetence. Pause. Is this a career-ending error, or is it a simple human stumble that everyone will forget by lunch? The power does not lie in preventing the initial impression. That will always arise. The power lies in that moment of choice, in the quiet courage to say, I see that thought, but I do not have to believe it. Before this day ends, you will almost certainly be handed a negative first impression. Your challenge is to catch just one. When that flash of anger or spike of anxiety hits, freeze the frame. Name the initial story your mind is telling you. Then consciously ask, is this the only way to see this? What is a more neutral, more generous, or simply more factual interpretation? This small act of mental resistance is how you build an inner citadel that no external event can ever storm. The Stoics knew that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what actually matters. Failure has a brutal but effective way of stripping away the decorations of our lives, leaving only the foundational pillars of our happiness standing. What we often mourn in a loss is not the essential thing itself, but the layers of comfort and status we had wrapped around it. This process, while painful, can be the very thing that guides us back to a more authentic and content existence. The Stoics did not just wait for disaster to teach this lesson. They practiced it proactively through voluntary discomfort. They would intentionally choose to wear simpler clothes, eat plainer food, or sleep on a harder bed. This was not self-punishment, but a form of mental vaccination. By willingly experiencing a small degree of lack, they immunized themselves against the terror of losing it all. They proved to themselves that their tranquility was not held hostage by their possessions. Seneca, a man of immense wealth, wrote extensively about its hidden dangers. He observed that riches bring great anxiety, that a large fortune is a master while a small one is a servant. He saw how the pursuit of more could enslave the mind, creating a constant state of want. But he also saw the other side, noting that poverty, when accepted, is an honest and unburdened state. It is a teacher that shows you what you are truly capable of enduring and what truly sustains the human spirit. Consider the story of a wealthy merchant in ancient Alexandria. His life was defined by his trade fleet, his villa overlooking the harbor, and his reputation in the guilds. Then a storm sank his entire fleet in a single night. The external failure was absolute. He was financially ruined, his social standing evaporated. In the depths of his despair, stripped of all his former identities, he was forced to look inward. He discovered, to his own astonishment, that the man who remained was not a failure. He still had his health, his knowledge of the world, and the quiet love of his family, which he had been too busy to notice. He began a simpler life as a scribe and a teacher, sharing the wisdom he had gained from his travels. He later wrote that he was never more wealthy than when he lost his fortune, because that was the moment he discovered he had a soul. His greatest business collapse became the birth of his inner riches. Now, bring this principle of essential simplicity into your own world. Take a moment and make a small list. What are 3 material possessions or external circumstances you believe you could lose without it fundamentally damaging your core capacity for happiness? It might be a specific luxury, a certain level of income, or a particular social circle. As you name them, notice the quiet realization that emerges. Your peace of mind does not live inside those things. It lives within you, and failure, however harsh, can be the very event that reminds you of that unshakable truth. The past is a story you tell yourself. The present is where your power lies. Every minute you spend replaying an old failure is a minute you are not spending on building your future. Stoicism is not a philosophy of passive reflection. It is a call to decisive action in the only moment that is ever real, the now. You cannot change what has already happened, but you can choose what you do with the next breath, the next thought, the very next step. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by the chaos of governing, constantly pulled his own focus back to the immediate task. He wrote, "Do not let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole." Do not try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can I not endure it? You will see that the present moment by itself contains no true terror. It is only your thoughts about the past and future that create the weight. Consider a Roman commander who has just lost a minor skirmish. A few of his men are wounded, his flank is exposed, and the enemy is regrouping. He could stand there, frozen, berating himself for his tactical error. He could replay the moment the line broke, drowning in shame and regret. But if he does that, he will lose the entire battle and the rest of his legion. His Stoic duty is to instantly accept the loss as a fact, a piece of data, and then channel his entire being into the present decision. He must assess the terrain now, rally his remaining troops now, and issue new orders now. The failure of the past minute becomes irrelevant to the demands of the present one. His power does not lie in undoing the skirmish, but in winning the next one. Now bring this focus to your own life. What is one situation you have been dwelling on? A past mistake or a recent setback that plays on a loop in your mind? Identify one single concrete action you can take right now, in this very hour, to improve that situation, even in the smallest way. If you are ruminating on a failed project, the action is not to relive the failure, but to send one email to explore a new idea. If you are stuck on a personal conflict, the action is to write one sentence of an apology or to perform one act of kindness for yourself. The action does not have to fix everything. It only has to be a single, forward-moving step taken in the present moment. That step is your declaration that the story of the past is over and the power of the present has begun. You don't need to invent courage. The Stoics had a cheat sheet of heroes. For them, philosophy was not just a set of abstract ideas to be debated, but a way of life to be embodied. To make this tangible, they constantly turned to the lives of historical figures, especially those who had failed nobly, as living, breathing templates for how to conduct themselves. When faced with a moral dilemma or a crushing setback, they would ask themselves a simple, powerful question: what would my chosen hero do in this situation? This practice provided a pre-made compass for moments when their own internal one felt shaky. Seneca, in his letters, frequently pointed to the example of Cato the Younger, a man who chose death over compromising his republican principles. He wrote that Cato's virtue was a public good, a model for others to witness and aspire toward. He was not a perfect man, but he was a consistent exemplar of integrity, a North Star by which Seneca could navigate his own complex political life. Beyond these famous names, history is filled with quieter figures who embody this principle. Consider the story of the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras. He was a brilliant thinker, a teacher to the great statesman Pericles in Athens. His revolutionary ideas about the cosmos, however, angered the city's traditionalists who accused him of impiety. He was put on trial, convicted, and forced into exile. This was his public failure, his reputation in tatters, his life's work in Athens abruptly ended. Yet, when the sentence was pronounced, Anaxagoras reportedly said, "Nature has long since condemned both me and my judges to death." He accepted his fate without bitterness. In exile, he did not fade away. He continued his work, his writings, and his teaching, influencing a new generation of thinkers elsewhere. His failure in Athens was not the end of his story because he refused to let an external verdict define his internal purpose. He remained until his last breath a philosopher. Now bring this into your own world for a moment. Think of one person you deeply admire, someone from history, from your community, or even from your own family. It could be a figure known for their resilience, like Nelson Mandela, or someone in your life who faced a difficulty with quiet grace. Now picture a specific challenge you are currently facing. It might be a difficult conversation you need to have, a fear of an upcoming presentation, or a personal goal you are hesitant to pursue. With that challenge clearly in mind, ask yourself this single question: what would my role model do in my shoes? How would they approach this situation with courage, with wisdom, with dignity? You do not need to face your struggle alone or from a blank slate. You can borrow the strength of the giants who walked this path before you. What if you actively tried to make yourself feel worse, to feel better? This is the counterintuitive heart of the 15th lesson, the practice of negative visualization. It is a deliberate and controlled exercise, a world away from the chaotic worries of anxiety. Anxiety is a thief that steals your present peace for a future it cannot control. Negative visualization, however, is a disciplined act of gratitude, a way of holding your most cherished possessions in an open hand, appreciating their profound value by consciously contemplating their absence. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, a man who possessed immense wealth, wrote powerfully about the importance of this mental rehearsal. He advised that we should love all our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise that we may keep them forever. He said we should remind ourselves that our possessions are on loan from fortune, which can reclaim them without our approval. This is not pessimism, it is the ultimate form of preparation and appreciation. It teaches us to enjoy what we have without becoming enslaved by the need to keep it forever. Let us try a quick mental exercise right now. Close your eyes for just a moment and bring to mind something you value deeply, perhaps your job or a key relationship. Now, instead of pushing away the fear of losing it, invite the thought in. Picture it clearly. Imagine receiving the news that your job has been eliminated, not with panic, but with calm observation. Or visualize a cherished person in your life, and then picture them moving away, the relationship shifting or ending. Do not get lost in the emotion, simply observe the scenario as a mental fact. Notice what arises. You will likely feel a sudden, sharp pang of loss, but then something else often follows, a wave of gratitude for the reality you still possess. The comfort of your current job, the sound of that person's laughter, suddenly feels brighter, more precious, and more immediate than it did just seconds ago. You have not cursed yourself, you have immunized yourself against taking it for granted. For the next 5 minutes today, I encourage you to practice this with something you truly value. Sit quietly and give yourself permission to mentally lose it. Walk through the steps you would take afterward. Feel the initial sting, and then watch as your mind begins to problem solve, to adapt, to recognize the other sources of strength and support you still have. This is not an invitation for sorrow, but a master key for unlocking a deeper, more resilient joy. A joy that is not dependent on fortune's endless favor, but is built on the unshakable knowledge that you can face whatever comes. The Stoics were scientists of their own minds, especially when things went wrong. They approached their own emotional eruptions and behavioral missteps not as crimes to be punished, but as fascinating data points to be collected and analyzed. This is judgment-free self-observation, the 16th lesson. It is the skill of watching your own internal reactions with the detached curiosity of a naturalist studying a strange animal. your only goal being to understand its patterns for the sake of future wisdom. Your anger, your jealousy, your defensiveness, these are not moral failures in this moment of observation. They are simply phenomena. The philosopher Epictetus, who was relentlessly practical, pointed directly to this ability as the very mark of moral progress. He said that the first proof of a person's improvement is that they do not blame others and that they can admonish themselves without bitterness or rancor. The key phrase is without rancor. You are not excusing the behavior, you are simply studying its origin in your own faulty judgments, so you can correct the root cause instead of just hating the symptom. Imagine a Stoic philosopher walking through the agora when a rival publicly mocks his latest essay. A hot flash of anger surges through him. His first impulse is to lash out with a cutting retort. But instead of acting on it, or even worse, collapsing into self-loathing for feeling anger, he does something different. He pauses and turns his attention inward. He observes the physical sensation of the heat in his chest. He notes the automatic story his mind is telling, that he has been disrespected and must defend his honor. He watches it all with calm interest, as if he were a scribe taking notes on a storm. By observing it without immediately agreeing to its demands, he robs the anger of its fuel. He sees it for what it is, a natural but misguided first impression, and he can now choose a wiser response, perhaps silence or a question, from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Your own mind offers a laboratory for this practice every single day. The next time you feel a strong negative emotion, rising frustration in traffic, envy at a friend's success, anxiety before a meeting, I want you to try this. Do not try to suppress the feeling. Do not criticize yourself for having it. Simply notice it. Say to yourself, here is frustration. I feel it tightening my shoulders. I notice the story that this traffic is personally ruining my day. Just observe. By stepping back and becoming the neutral witness to your own inner world, you create a tiny pocket of freedom. In that space, you are no longer a slave to your reactions, but their master, learning from each one to build a more peaceful and virtuous life. How much of your suffering is for things that exist only in your mind? This is the piercing question at the heart of the 17th lesson, the sheer futility of worry. Worry is a tax you pay on a disaster that has not yet arrived and may never come. It is a form of suffering twice, first in the anxious theater of your imagination, and then, only maybe, in the real world. The Stoics saw this clearly, understanding that this mental anguish is almost always a choice, a failure to remain in the present moment and to respect the boundary of what we can and cannot control. Your imagination can construct 1,000 different futures, most of them terrifying, but your power to act resides only in the one reality you currently inhabit. Seneca captured this truth with devastating precision. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. We are tortured not by what is happening, but by what we fear might happen." The actual event, when it arrives, is often manageable, a single piece of data to be dealt with, but the days or weeks of dread that precede it, that is a self-inflicted storm from which there is no shelter. Consider the story of an ancient merchant, a man named Lucius, waiting for his ship to return to port. The vessel was weeks overdue, carrying his entire fortune in spices and silk. Every day, Lucius climbed the hill overlooking the sea, his mind conjuring horrific visions. He saw the ship shattered on rocks, the cargo lost to the waves, his family plunged into poverty. He felt the shame of his creditors, the pity of his friends. This mental suffering was so acute it made him physically ill. He could not eat, he could not sleep. He was living through the catastrophe a dozen times a day. Then, one morning, a speck appeared on the horizon. It grew larger. It was his ship intact, its sails full of wind. It had been delayed by unusually calm seas, not storms. His fortune was safe, but what of the fortune he had spent? He had wasted weeks of his life, his health, and his peace of mind on a tragedy that existed solely within the walls of his own skull. He had paid the price for a loss that never occurred. Now, bring this home with a simple, powerful exercise. I want you to take a piece of paper or just open a note on your phone. Write down one single thing you are genuinely worrying about right now. Be specific. It could be a fear about a work deadline, a health concern, or a difficult conversation you are avoiding. Now draw 2 columns. Label the first one imagination. Label the second one reality. In the imagination column, write down all the stories, the fears, the catastrophic scenarios your mind has been weaving around this event. In the reality column, write down only the cold, hard, verifiable facts. What is actually true at this very moment? You will almost certainly find that the reality column is startlingly short, perhaps only a single line, while the imagination column is a sprawling epic of anxiety. This act of separation is not a magic trick to make the worry vanish, but it is the first step in reclaiming your mind from a future it was never meant to inhabit. The universe is your gym, and failure is your personal trainer. Every single setback, every moment of frustration, every plan that collapses is not a punishment. It is a deliberate drill, a custom-designed exercise meant to strengthen a specific part of your character. Life is not happening to you, it is training you. It is putting weight on your bar not to crush you, but to reveal how strong you have become and to make you stronger still. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew hardship intimately, used a powerful metaphor to explain this. He said that difficulties are like a wrestling coach. A tough trainer pairs a young athlete with a strong opponent, not because he wants the athlete to be defeated, but because he wants him to practice, to struggle, to learn, and ultimately to prevail. He said, "This is how it is with life. It sets against us a person who is insulting or a difficult situation as a trainer. The rude person is not your enemy. He is your sparring partner for practicing patience. The financial pinch is not a curse. It is your workout for building resourcefulness. The failed project is not a verdict on your worth. It is your training session for cultivating resilience." Think of a public speaker standing before an audience for the first time, their voice shaking, their mind going blank, perhaps even hearing a few unkind whispers from the crowd. That experience feels like pure humiliation, a public failure. But what if that exact moment was not a failure at all, but the first, essential repetition in a long training regimen for eloquence? That initial stumble taught them about their own nervous triggers. The cold reception taught them how to better read a room and connect with listeners. Each subsequent awkward speech, each question they could not answer perfectly, was another set of drills, building the mental and emotional muscle memory required to eventually speak with power and grace. The humiliation was the price of admission to their future mastery. So look at a difficulty you are facing right now. Name it clearly, whether it is a strained relationship, a work challenge, or a personal fear. Now, ask yourself this one question with the mindset of an athlete in training. What specific Stoic muscle is this situation forcing me to build? Is it the muscle of courage as I face something I would rather avoid? Is it the muscle of temperance as I learn to manage my desires or my frustrations? Or is it the muscle of wisdom as I am forced to see the world more clearly and make better judgments? Your current struggle is not an obstacle to your growth, it is the very substance of it. What if you have been using the world's broken scoreboard? We are trained from childhood to chase external validation, to measure our worth by promotions, likes, and public acclaim. But the 19th lesson teaches that true failure is not found in missing these targets, but in abandoning your own internal principles to hit them. The only score that matters is the one you keep for your own character. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus, who valued action over complex theory, taught that to live well is to live in accordance with nature and our own reasoned choice. He argued that we go astray when we chase what the crowd chases, instead of listening to the quiet, steady voice of our own understanding. A life lived according to popular opinion is a life of constant anxiety, because you are always at the mercy of a fickle judge you can never truly please. Your success must be an internal metric measured by your integrity, your effort, and your commitment to virtue, regardless of the final outcome. Consider the story of the painter El Greco, working in 16th century Spain. His elongated, intensely spiritual figures were unlike anything his contemporaries were producing. The art establishment of his day dismissed his work as bizarre, the product of a failing eyesight or a deranged mind. By the external scoreboard of his time, he was not a success. He did not achieve widespread fame or wealth, yet he remained unshakably committed to his unique vision, painting not for the critics but from a deep, internal compulsion to express what he saw as a higher truth. He defined his own success as faithfulness to his artistic conscience. It was only centuries after his death that the world finally caught up and his name was enshrined among the great masters. His failure in his own lifetime was, by his own internal measure, a profound and lasting success. His story asks us a difficult but essential question. How much of what you are pursuing is actually your dream, and how much of it is a script you inherited from your family, your culture, or social media? I want you to take a moment for a powerful, personal exercise. Think of one current endeavor in your life, whether it is your career, a creative project, or a personal relationship. Now write down your own private definition of success for it. This definition must be entirely within your control. It cannot be, "I will get a promotion," because that depends on another person's decision. It must be something like, "I will contribute my best ideas with courage and honesty," or "I will listen with patience and speak with kindness." This is your true scoreboard. When you measure yourself against this internal standard, you reclaim your power from a world that was never meant to be a fair judge. The Stoics believed in building a fortress inside your mind. This is not a physical place of stone and mortar, but a psychological stronghold constructed from your judgments, your values, and your practiced responses. Its walls are built through the daily, deliberate application of the principles we have explored, from the dichotomy of control to the premeditation of evils. The goal is to forge a core self so resilient that the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune simply clatter against its outer defenses, leaving the inhabitant, your true self, calm and undisturbed. Marcus Aurelius called this the Inner Citadel, a sanctuary of reason that is always accessible, no matter the chaos outside. He wrote in his Meditations, "Retreat into yourself." No retreat offers more quiet and relaxation than that into your own mind. This inner citadel is impregnable if you do not bring the enemy, your own chaotic impressions and false judgments, inside the gates with you. Consider a leader in the final days of his reign, watching a rebellion tear his empire apart. His legions are defecting, his allies are turning against him, and his capital city is in flames. The external world he built is collapsing into absolute ruin. Yet, if he has cultivated this inner fortress, he can witness the destruction without being destroyed by it. He can make clear-headed decisions about the safety of his family. He can accept his fate without hysterics, and he can meet his end with the dignity that comes from knowing he never betrayed his own principles, even in total failure. His kingdom was taken from him, but his inner citadel remained his own. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your inner citadel right now? If a storm of misfortune were to strike your life tomorrow, a professional disappointment, a personal loss, a public humiliation, how well would those walls hold? Be honest with your assessment. Is it a fragile structure, easily shaken by criticism or minor setbacks? Or is it a formidable fortress where your peace of mind remains unassailable because it is founded on what you truly control, your own character and your reasoned choice? Your answer is not a final verdict, but a starting point for the most important construction project you will ever undertake. The secret to never failing is to know when you have enough. We are conditioned to see life as an endless ladder, where every rung we grasp simply reveals the next one above it. This constant striving for more, for the next achievement, the next possession, the next level of status, is a factory for manufacturing failure. Because in a race with no finish line, you are always losing. Stoicism reframes this entirely, teaching that true success is not about acquisition, but about reaching a state of contentment with what you already possess. Your desires, not your circumstances, are the true source of your anxiety. Seneca saw this with stunning clarity, writing that it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Poverty, in the Stoic sense, is a condition of the mind, a bottomless pit of want that no amount of external success can ever fill. Consider the tragic arc of Alexander the Great. He conquered the known world from Greece to Egypt to the vast expanses of India. He possessed unimaginable wealth, commanded invincible armies, and was worshipped as a god-king. Yet, according to the legends, upon achieving these staggering victories, he was said to have wept because there were no more worlds left to conquer. His entire identity was built upon the next conquest, the next external validation. When that finally ran out, he was left with a hollow emptiness, a man who had everything the world could offer but had failed to secure the one thing that mattered, an inner sense of enough. He died young, miserable in his boundless success, a stark lesson that an empire cannot satisfy a soul that craves infinity. Now, bring this wisdom into your own life. Take a quiet moment and make a simple list. What are 3 things you already have right now that are genuinely enough for your happiness? It might be the warmth of your morning coffee, the loyalty of a single good friend, or the simple security of a roof over your head. Name them, write them down. This is not an exercise in denying your ambitions, but in grounding them. It is the practice of building your happiness on a foundation of what you already control, what you already possess, making you immune to the perceived failure of not having more. Nothing is forever, and that's the best news you'll get all day. This temporary nature of all things, from your greatest triumph to your most stinging defeat, is not a cause for despair, but the very source of your freedom. The ancient Stoics saw the entire cosmos as a flowing river, where everything is in a state of perpetual change and renewal. Your life is not a static monument, but a moving current, and trying to cling to any single moment, good or bad, is like trying to grasp the water in your hands. Marcus Aurelius constantly meditated on this reality to maintain his equilibrium. He wrote in his private journal, "Remember that all is opinion, and all that happens is as familiar and well known as a rose in spring or fruit in summer." It is the nature of things to change, to be perfected, and to pass away. He saw the rise and fall of cities, the birth and death of emperors, all as part of the same beautiful and necessary cycle. Look at the ruins of a great ancient civilization like the Roman Forum. What was once the bustling center of an empire that seemed eternal is now a collection of silent, broken stones warmed by the sun and explored by tourists. The senators who debated there, the merchants who grew rich, the generals who celebrated their victories, they all believed in the permanence of their world. Their successes felt absolute and their failures felt final, yet time smoothed it all into the same quiet landscape. Their permanent realities were, in fact, utterly temporary. This is not a sad story, but a liberating one. It means the failure that feels so solid and immovable in your life right now is already beginning to dissolve, making way for the next phase. So take that one problem that feels so heavy and permanent in your life right now. It could be a financial worry, a personal conflict, or a professional setback. I want you to give it a name and then attach a simple, powerful phrase to it. Whisper it to yourself, "This too shall pass." Say it out loud, "This too shall pass." Feel the weight of that perceived permanence begin to soften. The situation may not vanish instantly, but your belief in its endlessness will start to crack, allowing a sliver of light and the fresh air of possibility to finally get in. The Stoics practiced being poor, hungry, and cold on purpose. This was not self-punishment, but a form of psychological strength training. By voluntarily stepping into discomfort, they were vaccinating themselves against the fear of future loss. They proved to their own bodies and minds that hardship was not only endurable, but that it could sharpen the senses and fortify the spirit. This practice dismantles the power that comfort holds over us, revealing that our peace of mind does not depend on external conditions. Seneca, who enjoyed immense wealth, was its greatest advocate. He wrote that we must periodically practice poverty so that we may never be terrified by it. He advised setting aside a certain number of days each month to be content with the scantiest and cheapest food, with rough and coarse clothing. This, he said, is how you build genuine confidence, the kind that whispers, "I have been here before, and I know the way through." Picture a wealthy Roman senator, a man accustomed to fine wines, soft linens, and a villa staffed with slaves. For a few days each month, he would leave that life behind. He would sleep on a simple cot, wear a plain tunic, and eat the same hard bread and lentils as a common legionary. He was not pretending. He was conducting a live fire exercise for his soul. In that self-imposed simplicity, he confronted his own fears of losing status and comfort. He discovered that the man beneath the finery was still strong, still capable, and still whole. When he returned to his normal life, his appreciation for its pleasures was deeper, but his anxiety about losing them was gone. He had looked fortune in the eye and found himself unafraid. This ancient practice holds a powerful key for our modern lives, which are so often engineered for maximum comfort and minimal friction. Your challenge is to choose one small, voluntary discomfort to incorporate this week. It does not need to be extreme. It could be taking a cold shower for the first minute of your morning routine. It could be walking somewhere you would normally drive, even if the weather is less than perfect. It could be choosing a simple meal of rice and vegetables instead of an elaborate dinner. The goal is not to suffer, but to practice. In that moment of chosen discomfort, pay close attention. Notice the initial resistance, and then notice the calm that follows when you realize you are okay. You are not just building resilience, you are actively dismantling the tyranny of what if, replacing it with the quiet, unshakable certainty of "I can." A Stoic doesn't ask why me, but what can this teach me? This is the final and perhaps most transformative habit of a resilient mind. It is the ultimate reframing tool, a deliberate pivot from seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance to becoming a student of it. Every single event, especially the stumbles and frustrations, is no longer a random obstacle but a classroom, and you are there to learn. The philosopher Epictetus, who turned his own brutal hardships into a philosophy of freedom, gave us the precise formula for this. He said that difficulties are what show men what they are. that they are like a touchstone which reveals the true quality of our character. A challenge does not create a weakness in you, it reveals one, giving you the perfect targeted material for your own improvement. Think back to the story of Seneca in exile. The external event was a crushing political failure, a public disgrace that could have broken him, but Seneca did not dwell on the injustice. He asked the Stoic question, "What can this teach me?" His exile taught him the profound value of solitude and quiet reflection, conditions he used to produce his most enduring philosophical works. The failure of his political career became the necessary lesson in turning inward, a lesson that gifted his wisdom to the world. Now, bring this final principle to your own life, not with a major catastrophe, but with a minor annoyance from your recent past. Recall a moment this week where you felt a flash of frustration. Perhaps you were stuck in traffic, a colleague was rude, or a piece of technology failed you. In that moment, the automatic question was likely, "Why is this happening to me?" Now, I want you to reframe it. Look back at that same minor event and ask, "What was this trying to teach me?" Maybe the traffic jam was a lesson in patience, forcing you to slow down in a life that moves too fast. The rude colleague was a lesson in your own triggers, showing you where your peace is still too easily disturbed. The broken technology was a lesson in adaptability, reminding you that your plans are fragile and your calm should not be. This simple shift in questioning turns every irritation into a personal curriculum. Your life, with all its beautiful, messy, and difficult moments, is not a series of random successes and failures. It is a custom-designed school for your soul, and you now hold the final key to its most valuable lessons. These 24 lessons form a single, unbreakable chain. Each link, forged in the fire of an ancient collapse, connects to create a complete Stoic toolkit for the modern soul. The central message is not that you will avoid failure, but that you will learn to use it. Every setback, from a minor irritation to a life-altering loss, ceases to be a source of pain and becomes raw material for building strength, for gaining wisdom, for crafting an unshakable character. The entire philosophy rests on one foundational shift, that our judgment of events, not the events themselves, is what truly defines the quality of our lives. You are the author of the meaning, and failure is simply the plot twist that makes the story profound. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who knew both immense wealth and devastating exile, offered a final, piercing definition of this achieved peace. He wrote that the happy man is content with his present lot, no matter what it is, and is reconciled to his circumstances. This contentment is not passive resignation. It is the active, joyful embrace of your entire story, the light and the shadow, because you trust that all of it is your teacher. Your life, with all its stumbles and triumphs, is not a series of accidents waiting to be judged by the world. It is your personal, custom-designed curriculum in Stoic virtue. Every challenge is a lesson plan, every frustration a pop quiz, and every major failure the final exam for a module in resilience. You are both the student and the professor in this sacred classroom of experience. If this journey through ancient wisdom has illuminated a new path for you, consider subscribing for more guides to practical philosophy. And in the comments below, we would love to hear from you. Share the one lesson from these 24 that resonated most deeply with your own story. Your insight might just be the lesson another soul needs to hear today.